If you've been thinking about ChemiCloud for shared hosting, this video is going to be reviewing them. Basically, one part reviewing it, one part showing you how to set up LiteSpeed cache, QUIC.cloud CDN, Perfmatters, and getting the best performance on ChemiCloud. That is what the video will be. The first half is basically a sales pitch telling you why I recommend them for shared hosting. And we'll just start by clicking through the WordPress admin of this demo website, which uses their WordPress Turbo plan, which is the plan I recommend. You can see it loads very quickly, even in an incognito window, and just clicking through the navigation, it loads instantly. I like to do the admin test because it shows uncached performance, but you can also check the time to first byte of the demo site, which is usually around 100 milliseconds no matter where you test it from. So we'll just go here and KCDN's performance test, run it, and you don't need super expensive hosting to get a fast time to first byte. This hosting plan costs about $5 a month. One big reason it loads fast is because I got this email from Dragos from ChemiCloud, basically saying that they updated their CPUs. All you need to know is these are the CPUs they use. It's not listed on their website yet, but I waited to do this video because this makes a huge impact on your performance. Not a lot of hosts talk about which CPU they use or which models, but this one clocks out at 3.8 gigahertz. A lot of budget hosts use 2.5, 3 gigahertz. This is a big reason why especially the admin and your front end load it quickly. Like I said, I recommend their WordPress Turbo plan. It's about $5 a month. You get more inodes, you get more storage, but the main thing is you get 3 CPU cores and 3 gigabytes of RAM. And another reason I like them is because you get 100% of your CPU resources. So with someone like SiteGround who limits CPU seconds, this is a big reason people have to upgrade on SiteGround. You don't hear a lot about it because they delete a bunch of posts in Facebook groups. If you've been with SiteGround long enough, you know that a word fence scan or something that causes more CPU intensive tasks, you can max these out easily and then they'll likely suspend your account until you upgrade. So you don't have to worry about that with ChemiCloud. You get 100% of your CPU cores. And if you happen to run out, they offer this Turbo Boost add-on, which adds another 3 CPU cores and 3 gigabytes of RAM. So if you were on the WordPress Turbo plan, this would mean you are getting 6 CPU cores and 6 gigabytes of RAM. So a big problem with shared hosting is you sign up for 1 or even 3 years, and you're getting a fixed amount of resources. There's no option to scale. So if you get more traffic, or you run more plugins which consume resources, at least you have this option. And I'm pretty sure ChemiCloud is one of the only hosts that do this on shared hosting. You get the LiteSpeed cache plugin because they use LiteSpeed servers. 4.8 stars, does a great job optimizing Core Web Vitals. And you will use QUIC.cloud CDN, which is designed specifically for LiteSpeed and is currently #1 on Speed Vitals CDN Performance Tracker. So both your cache plugin is free and fast, and your CDN is also fast and doesn't cost a lot of money, but we'll get into that later. Server locations, they have a bunch of them. You can go through this if you want. They do 10 to 200 free migrations, 10 non-cPanel, 200 cPanel. And even if you look at their Trustpilot reviews, you'll see a lot of people moving from SiteGround and Hostinger. Whereas if you look at their Trustpilot profile, even though SiteGround has 20,000 reviews, not one of them moved to ChemiCloud. Most of the people who move from SiteGround move from GoDaddy, Bluehost, HostGator, a lot of what I'll call bottom of the barrel hosting, where ChemiCloud, you'll see people move from, SiteGround, Hostinger. I mean, Hostinger, I could make a whole review about. Just stay away. They've been accused of running scams. They suspend your account for no reason. They also give you less resources. Their highest shared plan only comes with 2 CPU cores and about 1.5 gigabytes of RAM. And SiteGround compared to LiteSpeed, most people agree that LiteSpeed wins. So you want a LiteSpeed host, but you also want a host that uses fast CPUs. A lot of people skip that part and just say, LiteSpeed hosting, I get to use LiteSpeed cache and QUIC.cloud. Well, you want one that uses fast CPUs as well. And I did a big comparison of ChemiCloud and other shared hosts in a spreadsheet. I spent way too much time on this, but I'll leave a link to it in the video description. They have a lot of green. They have a lot of good stuff going for them. And that's my ChemiCloud pitch. So I do think they're better than Hostinger, A2, obviously Bluehost. SiteGround are way too expensive, and they're unethical. I mean, we have Ivicadelic posting fake reviews in all his Facebook groups, so there's definitely a good consensus that they went downhill after about 2019 or something, and I agree with that. So this is who I recommend for shared hosting. No matter if you're going with ChemiCloud or another LiteSpeed host, you can use this next section to configure LiteSpeed cache no matter who you're using. Once you pick out a plan, like the WordPress Turbo plan, you're going to want to install LiteSpeed cache and go into the presets. Now, I recommend the advanced preset because it enables a lot of settings that I would have already recommended. These can kind of break your website if you're not careful. The advanced preset is what I recommend starting from. So once you do that, go into your general settings, request a domain key, link it to QUIC.cloud. Guest mode and guest optimization are going to be on. Your server IP address, instead of using this, I recommend going into your cPanel account and copying your shared IP address and pasting it in here because this isn't always accurate. Once you do that, we're going to go into the cache settings. In cache, you're going to leave everything on except for cache logged in users and cache commenters. These can both consume server resources, and you probably don't need them unless you run like a membership website where each user needs their own cache version who's logged in. And you probably don't need cache commenters. It's when someone leaves a comment that's pending and they get their own cache version. So that's all you need to do in the cache settings. And now we're going to go into object cache. And the first thing you want to do is decide between Redis or memcached. So Redis is generally preferred. Even the Stack Overflow thread says Redis is more powerful, more popular, and better supported than memcached. Make sure not only your host supports Redis, but the plan that you're using also supports it. So on ChemiCloud, you can see Redis is under website performance features, and it's available on all the plans. And you want to Google your host's instructions on setting up object cache because they might have a specific port number or method of activating Redis. For ChemiCloud, they recommend using LiteSpeed cache. You're going to want to do 3 things in this. Know that your host supports Redis or memcached. You're going to want the port number, which you'll see in ChemiCloud is 0. And then you're also going to want the socket path. And they will tell you how to get that by enabling the Redis object cache section. So basically what you want to do is go into your cPanel account, and this will be a little different depending on which cPanel version you have. For ChemiCloud, it's Accelerate WordPress. If you don't see that, you might have a Redis object cache option. Or if you don't see that, you can go to Select PHP version, go to your PHP extensions, and enable a memcache or Redis there. For me, we need the Accelerate WordPress. We're going to go to Active and make sure Redis object cache is enabled. You're going to go back into your WordPress admin and go to plugins, and you should see that the Redis object cache plugin is activated. If it is, go to settings, and if it's not, activate it yourself, and enable object cache, and you should see under host, this is the socket path. We can either use the Redis object cache plugin to do this, or we can just paste the socket path and go back into LiteSpeed cache, go to your object cache settings, and since the port number is 0, like it was in ChemiCloud's instructions, we're going to put it that. The host is the socket path that we just copied. Since it's Redis, we're going to enable Redis and enable object cache. The only other thing you need to worry about is the Redis database ID. If you have multiple websites, your first website can be 0, your second website can be 1, your third website can be 2. So each website should have a unique database ID, but if you're only running one website, you don't need to do anything, just keep it as 0. Once you save changes, make sure you pass the connection test. And if you don't, try using the Redis Object Cache plugin. If that doesn't work, I just recommend contacting your hosting company and having them set it up. It should be pretty easy to do for them. Once that's working, go into the Advanced tab, and we're going to go to Instant Click and make sure this is off. What this does is when users hover over a link, it downloads the page in the background, so by the time they click it, the page appears to load instantly. The problem with this is that it doesn't preload pages in the viewport. What you want to do instead is install the Flying Pages plugin. So not only does this preload pages on mouse hover like LiteSpeed cache, but it also preloads pages in the viewport. And what that does is it makes your navigation faster. So when you click through your navigation, it preloads these pages up here. So by the time you click them, it loads very quickly. And that's a big reason why the navigation menu loads so quickly on this demo website, is because of Flying Pages. So make sure that's disabled. Install Flying Pages. The default settings are usually fine, and then we'll move on to the CDN tab. First, in the general settings, you're going to want to request a domain key and link it to QUIC.cloud, add your server IP address, and once you do that, you can enable QUIC.cloud CDN and go to QUIC.cloud CDN setup, start the CDN setup, and refresh it. It may take a couple minutes, but they'll eventually give you 2 name servers. Go into your domain registrar and use custom name servers and replace the default ones with the ones QUIC.cloud gave you. And once that is done, you're going to go back, refresh this, make sure it's working, and then go into your QUIC.cloud dashboard. So there's a few things I want to point out about QUIC.cloud. First of all, you're going to want to use the standard paid plan. The free plan only comes with 6 POPs or points of presence, where the standard plan uses all 80 plus POPs and includes DDoS protection and a bunch of other security features. It's only 0.02 to 0.08 cents per gigabyte. Once you have QUIC.cloud set up and you signed up for it, you can scroll down in the CDN tab and change from the free plan to the standard plan. Now make sure that you actually add some credits, $10, $20, whatever you want to add. You do get a certain amount of credits every month, and QUIC.cloud is also needed for certain optimizations to work in LiteSpeed cache, like UCSS, image optimization, and so forth. You can test Cloudflare as well. They have a much larger and very fast network, but you don't get these optimizations in LiteSpeed cache. So there's pros and cons to both. You can try APO, or you can try QUIC.cloud standard plan. Go to CDN config and scroll down, and one thing I would do is enable QUIC backend. This lets you connect to QUIC.cloud via HTTP3. You can run this test to make sure it's working, but you'll want to enable that. Scroll down to WordPress, and I also recommend enabling these 2 options, which most websites should be fine for. You probably don't use them. Enable hot link protection, which basically prevents people from copying your images and using your bandwidth. Oh, and block browser XML RPC. Once you're done with QUIC.cloud, we'll go back to image optimization. Go to image optimization settings, and the only thing I would change here is optimize losslessly. If you want lossless compression, enable that. That's the only other thing I would do here. If you go to optimization summary and let QUIC.cloud run the image optimizations, once it's done, you'll see use original files and use optimize images, so you can switch back and forth in case something goes wrong. And in the media library, you can also see the original and the WebP versions that are being served. If you're not sure if QUIC.cloud is serving the WebP versions, you can always use Chrome DevTools. We can just go to the Network tab, press Ctrl-R to refresh it, and go to Images. Oh yeah, there's one WebP, the hero image. So that's how you check if your images are actually being served in WebP. Now we'll go back to page optimization. So there are some settings here that can break your website. So removing unused CSS or generate UCSS, and then also delaying JavaScript. Those will give you the best results usually, and you ideally want them enabled. But to prevent your website from breaking, I recommend going to Perfmatters documentation and looking at the common unused CSS exclusions, which is for UCSS in a LiteSpeed cache. And all you're going to do is go through these and see if there's any services you're using. So since I use the Astra theme in this demo website, I would copy this and the Astra mobile menu, and I would exclude them from UCSS. So to do that, go to Tuning, and then you see UCSS file excludes an inline, and you would paste it there, and also paste any other services you're using. The next thing I would do is go to common JS delay exclusions, and I'll leave a link to these in the video description. Copy these and do the same thing. Go through the services, see which ones you're using, copy the code, and then to exclude those, you'll go to Tuning, JS deferred delayed excludes, and paste them in here. By excluding those common files, we can go back to the CSS settings and try to enable some of these, and it gives you a lower chance of breaking your website. Once you've done that, I recommend trying out CSS Combine and UCSS. Now, like I said, it can break your layout, so once you enable these and save changes, go back to your website and check for errors. And if you do see errors, there's a way to exclude other problematic files. This is the video that LiteSpeed Cache has. Basically, you'll go into Chrome DevTools, look at all your CSS files. That would be in here in the Network tab. Reload it, Control-R. Go to your CSS files, and you're going to copy all of these. Go back into your CSS settings and exclude them all, and then check your layout to make sure it's working again. And then one by one, you're going to delete each file individually while checking your website for errors. So go to Chrome DevTools, copy all your CSS files, paste them in here, and then start removing them one by one to identify which file is giving you issues. And you can do the same thing for delaying JavaScript. So if you can get UCSS working, that is ideal. If you can't, you will disable these and load CSS asynchronously while also enabling this option. So this is basically choice number 2 if UCSS isn't working, but you'll want to do one of those. Go to your JS settings and leave everything as the default, but do try delayed. And like I said, view the Perfmatters documentation, add common JS delay exclusions to the tuning tab, and try to get delay working. If you can't get it working, use deferred, but delay will give you better results. In the HTML settings, there's usually nothing to do under prefetch or pre-connect. These will establish early connections to third-party domains, but the problem is that there's usually no third-party domains you need to optimize, usually. Google fonts, like fonts.gstatic.com, you're going to want to host those locally instead, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. And then since QUIC.cloud and Cloudflare don't use a CDN URL, you don't need to pre-connect that either. So whatever is left out of your third-party domains, which you can check in like PageSpeed Insights, then you can consider pre-fetch or pre-connecting them. Just be careful with pre-connect because it can give you worse results if you pre-connect a bunch of third-party domains. Check your third-party code report and see which domains, and you can test out doing that. HTML lazy load selectors. This is basically like lazy loading anything on your website. You can do any class or ID. So if you go to your website and inspect something like an Elementor section, a Divi section, WooCommerce related products, and you want to lazy load those sections, grab the class or ID and you can lazy load them using this setting right here. Otherwise, we're going to leave most everything as the default it should be from that preset. Remove no script tag, we're going to turn off. And then in the media settings, this is why I recommend Perfmatters. I think it does a better job with lazy loading and how it treats viewport images. LiteSpeed cache will exclude viewport images from lazy load or your LCP images, but it doesn't preload them. There are also other things Perfmatters does in their lazy load feature, which LiteSpeed cache does not. So if you're not using Perfmatters, then you would enable all the lazy load settings and VPI settings in LiteSpeed cache. I recommend using Perfmatters not only for lazy load, but because it also has a script manager and other features to optimize your website. So if you're using Perfmatters, do not enable any of these. Turn all these off. And same with VPI. Leave those off too. And since you're not lazy loading anything using LiteSpeed cache, there's nothing to do here. In the localization tab, you can usually leave all the settings as the default, but if you have third-party code on your website that you want to localize, just enable localized resources and add the files right here. I did mention that fonts should be hosted locally. What I recommend doing for that is going to plugins, add the OMGF plugin, go to your settings, and save and optimize. And that will load your fonts locally. And then if you want to preload them, especially if they load above the fold or they're in CSS files, you can do that here. So just make sure that you're not preloading fonts that aren't immediately used. If there's any preload warnings under the console tab right here. So if you use OMGF to host fonts locally and preload them, double check in the console tab of Chrome DevTools to make sure there's no preload warnings. Now we'll go back to LiteSpeed cache. We'll go to database now. You're going to first want to go to your database optimization settings, and you can specify a max number of post revisions. I like to do 10, and you can save that. And then you can clean all. You can clean your database once every maybe week or two, and then go to crawler, go to the general settings. So the crawler, it's a preload feature. It preloads pages. You don't really want to do this on shared hosting because it consumes a lot of resources, and a lot of shared hosts won't even let you do it. But if you're on a VPS or more powerful hosting, you can enable the crawler and tweak these settings. So in my LiteSpeed cache settings, I specify which of these you should increase or decrease depending on how powerful your server is. You know, a higher delay consumes less resources. So it's really all about running the crawler and making sure you have enough resources to do it. They usually don't recommend it for shared hosting, but if you're going to do it on shared hosting, I would definitely recommend looking at my LiteSpeed cache tutorial and going to crawler. And on shared hosting, these are the numbers that I recommend. And if you're on a VPS, you can increase them or decrease depending on whether it increases server resources or not. It'll make your website faster. Just know that it's not really available on shared hosting or not supposed to be used. And if you do that, make sure you add your sitemap here so you're only preloading important pages. What else? Toolbox. Toolbox heartbeat. So you're going to want to enable all of these. And the numbers I recommend are 0, 0, and then 120. And go ahead and save changes. And that's all you have to do with LiteSpeed Cache. Now, if you're using Perfmatters, I'll go over those settings too. There's a lot of overlapping features, so you really only want to make sure that you're using Perfmatters for new optimizations, you could say. Like disabling emojis is already done in LiteSpeed Cache, so you don't need that. These are the settings that I recommend when using LiteSpeed Cache. I'm not going to go over them all, but there you go. If you want to copy those, you can do that. JavaScript, there's nothing to do here since LiteSpeed Cache already does all that. Same thing for CSS. You previously heard me say that LiteSpeed Cache excludes your LCP images or viewport images from lazy load, but it doesn't preload them. That's one reason why I recommend using Perfmatters 2, is because you can preload critical images or LCP images. However many amount of images that are usually on the top of the page or the viewport, that's the number you want to add. 3 is usually a good number. The preload right here, this is used to preload. You know, we don't want to do fonts because OMGF is already doing that. But if you can preload the Gutenberg block library, if you're using Gutenberg, you can preload background images since background images aren't lazy loaded by default. If you wanted to preload those, you can do that here. But for this, all I did was preload Gutenberg's WP block library, since that's what I'm using. In lazy loading, these are the settings that I use. Like I said, we're going to use Perfmatters for lazy loading and not LiteSpeed Cache. We're going to enable it for images. You don't need to change this setting because the preload critical images already excludes those images from lazy load. So this is kind of like a duplicate. So you can leave that as 0 if you wanted to. Iframes and videos, YouTube thumbnails, missing image dimensions, CSS background images. If you have background images that need to be lazy loaded, you can add their selectors right here by going to your website, inspecting that element, and copying the selectors. Now go to fonts. Since we used OMGF to host fonts locally and preload them, make sure all these are disabled in Perfmatters. Nothing to do for CDN. If you use Google Analytics and want to host your tracking code locally, you can do that here. Local Analytics, they give you an option for like minimal, which uses a smaller file size than default. So in your Perfmatters settings, go to Tools, enable the Script Manager. And now what we're going to want to do is go to your website, go to any page, and click Perfmatters Script Manager. Go to the settings, enable display dependencies, save changes, and if you want to test this without breaking your website, enable test mode. Just make sure when you're done with this that you deselect testing mode. And what the script manager does is it allows you to disable plugins or certain CSS and JavaScript files from loading in certain parts of your website. For example, if you have like a contact form, you would go to your contact page, make sure it only loads there and nowhere else. When you install a plugin, some developers load it across your entire website, others don't. So you're basically just gonna go click through some of your pages that load certain plugins, like your contact page, look at the script manager, see which plugins are loading on that page, and optimize your site to only load the plugins where they're used. When you're done configuring everything, go to the toolbox, go to Purge. You're going to want to purge all in LiteSpeed Cache, purge QUIC.cloud CDN, and check for layout issues, and also go into your Chrome DevTools report, look for warnings in the console tab, and that's a really good start to make sure there's no errors on your website. So that's all I got. If you want to use ChemiCloud, I will leave an affiliate link in the video description. I really appreciate it. It helps me make these videos. So please use my link in the video description to support me. And if you have any questions about either ChemiCloud, setting up LiteSpeed cache, or QUIC.cloud, or even Cloudflare, I have a tutorial that also shows you how to set up Super Page Cache plugin, which is free full page caching from Cloudflare. I have instructions on that. Use my tutorial, use LiteSpeed cache support. They have a Facebook group as well. This is my WordPress hosting Facebook group, but LiteSpeed also has their own group. Join both, like, subscribe, and I appreciate you watching this video. Peace.